Hi guys, quick overview of some of the teaching methods that we use, and some of them are very old, some of them are from the latest research. So let's go through them very quickly. You have seen in anywhere you look concerning education and the best way to get a message across that we need to teach via auditory means, visual means and kinesthetic means. Obviously we have been privy to this with our original martial arts training. The teacher talks, we listen, which is auditory. We look at the teacher performing the movement, visual, and kinesthetic, we give it a shot ourselves. I also want you to keep in mind that we need to mix these three together. Second on the list here is spaced learning. If we are to be able to expect our students to be able to remember a number of techniques under pressure, we have to revisit those techniques on a regular basis. Seems pretty straightforward. Let's give you an example. I teach a technique today. Let's imagine it's technique number 1. At the end of the lesson, I mention the important parts of teaching number 1, performing number 1. The next day we come back and I revisit it again. I might even just mention it. I don't need to teach it again. I just need to get it to the top of the mental pile again one more time. So that's the next day. Then I can spring forward to a week and then probably even a month after that. Once you have spaced the learning out and used a number of different modalities, it then becomes part of long-term learning. Expecting a student to see something once and then remember it forever is impossible. Second thing, deliberate practice. And if you've looked into the work of Malcolm Gladwell and 10,000 Hours, or the original Erickson research, they talk about an elite level performer doing a decent body of practice. And most importantly, that body of practice must include deliberate focus on micro areas of a sport or an activity. For example, if we want to get better at the total sport, we have to break it down into chunks and deliberately practice those chunks in isolation so that when we come back to them later on, they can be performed with ease. This may mean, for example, Josh Waitskin takes all of his chess pieces off the board and only has a king and a pawn and a queen. And so does his opponent. So he practices what's called the end game. So when he gets back to, when a game resembles that end section, he's deliberately practiced that portion. I'll leave it up to you to be able to work that into your training with your students. Don't underestimate this one in red, comedy. The reason why a lot of people will quit martial arts training is because it's not fun anymore. Not because they're not necessarily learning, but it's because it's not fun anymore. Please make sure you work in some way for the students to laugh. Example, last week, every time the students, as I was doing an instructional role or wrestle with one of the kids, I said, every time you see me move for a figure 4, I want you to make this sound, ba-bow. So I want you to be able to, all the kids say that particular sound as I move. So I'm moving into the mount and I move my hands towards the figure 4 and all the kids go, ba-bow. Then I withdraw my hands and I go to Kesakatami or north-south or guard. And every time I'm moving, they're looking for a way to be able to see the figure 4. But as soon as I move my hands towards a figure 4 or an Americana, they say, ba-bow. Therefore, they had smiles on their faces. Probably one of the reasons why they don't feel connected to a club is that they don't have a personal connection with the instructors. I want you to make sure you have a student to instructor connection and also a student to student connection. That's something that you need to work on every single class to make sure the kids or the students are connected to you and that they're connected to each other. Third last, ownership. If a student feels that they own a technique, the chances of them remembering it are much higher. So if you can get the kids to own a technique by naming a technique after them or getting them to think of a name for the technique, even if it's a well-known technique, change the name in your class so that they understand when you say their particular name, like the Johnny technique, that's what you mean. Who cares if that particular technique is an arm bar or a left hook? Just call it the Johnny technique. That makes Johnny famous, and it means that we now own that technique, especially Johnny does. Second last, stress inoculation. Your job is to be able to enable your students, male or female, adult or kid, to be able to perform those techniques when the crunch comes, for them to be able to think under pressure. So you need to be able to inoculate them, prepare them for that stress by somehow in the classes repeating it so that it resembles an actual real situation or a competition situation or whatever it might be. Finally, if you can do a video breakdown of you sending a video to one of the kids of them doing the move, or even if the kid does the move and you video, you're not involved in it at all. The kid does it or you do it, and therefore it's only needs to be a short bite, a short 1 minute video of what they did in the class. Even if it's them doing something good in the sparring, it might only be 10 seconds. If you can chunk that and send it to the kid, that connects them to that technique, and it gives them something to be able to commemorate, to celebrate afterwards. If you work all of these into your regular classes, chances of your students not only being connected to your club, but also being better athletes in performing each of these moves is much higher.